Or the tape.
Test on test.
Cynthia, what I'm trying to say is I have no idea. Yeah. Right now it's not the no, it's the steer. And I give you a problem with all the numbers.
Can you figure out which number you would like to?
Test on this one. Test. You're good?
Test on this one. Test. I don't hear him in here, but it's okay.
Test on this one. Test.
Okay, good. That'd be great.
Color coordination. Is this okay to be where I am, or shall I be here for you? No, you moved it, so I'm trying to get it. Well, no, he told me. I said, you said the end. He said, no, not the end. He said here.
Well, all your stuff was on the end. No, it was on the end.
Well, whatever. It don't matter. Just sit down. Hey, and I'm happy to sit here.
We're changing everything. Now, Cynthia's here.
I'll just sit across on the floor. How's that?
The world is almost mind-numbingly dynamic. Out of the Big Bang came the stars. Out of stardust came the earth. Out of earth came single-celled creatures. Out of the evolutionary life and death of these creatures came human beings, with consciousness and freedom that concentrates the self-transcendence of matter itself. Human beings are the universe become conscious of itself. We are the celebrants of the universe.
All right, listen up, those of you who decided to actually set your clocks. We got to sing out so that we wake everyone else up. I invite you to rise and body your spirit for this opening hymn.
Here we have gathered side by side, circle of kinship, come and step inside. May all who seek here find a kindly word. May all who seek here feel they have been heard. Sing now together this our heart's own song. Here we have gathered, called to celebrate days of our lifetimes, matter small and great. We of all ages, living out as fans, infants and sages, sharing what we can. Sing now together this our heart's own song. Life has its battles, sorrows and regrets, but in the shadows let us not forget. We who now gather know each other's pain. Kindness can heal us as we give, we gain. Sing now in friendship this our heart's own song.
Welcome to the. Is this one high enough? Can y'all hear it okay or no? All right, can you go a little higher on the wireless? Good? Yeah. Welcome to the Unitarian Church. My name is Nathan. I'm one of your ministers. Was that a Jim Scott? No, it was not. All right, then I'm not going to gossip about that hymn. My name is Nathan. I'm pleased to welcome you today. A few things you need to know. First, we have a guest in the pulpit. Well, a guest on the chancel who will later be in the pulpit. Michael Dowd, who was at any part of the weekend with him. Online people, some of the people, probably a majority, raised their hands in here, just so you know. He is a compost theologian. Do we have to explain it, or are we good?
We're good.
All right. Eco-theologian, and we brought him in from Michigan, New York, Miami, wherever else, but Michigan, to be here to talk, to really lead a conversation through the weekend. You can continue that conversation after this service during middle hour in, Kathy, in the fellowship hall. See, I know all of this right from the top of my head. If you are not in the mood for talking, we also have a game called We See that you can play in room 1. Getting no contradiction, I'm correct. All right, so here's the other things you need to know. First of all, if you have not been in the kitchen, the tiles that you paid for that have a 30-year warranty are in. Online people, there's now really pretty tiles in the kitchen. The installation is not done. It's just done enough for us to have a service on Sunday. But go enjoy tiles, walking on tiles as much as anyone can. Also, after this service, after the 11:30 service, will be the 6 Source Sharing Circle. This is a neo-pagan, earth-centered spirituality group that is a part of the church. That is, so you can, for those of you here, go home, have a brunch, and come back at about 12:30. We have 2 things left that you need to know. First is we have some Together Baton Rouge things we need you to know about, and specifically how to get engaged in Together Baton Rouge. So on March 30th at 6 o'clock at Greater Mount Carmel Baptist Church, and there's 2 of them, this is the one up in Scotlandville, we will have our biannual delegates assembly. They've asked each church to commit a number of people. I will tell you, one church committed 25 people to show up. I committed 19 because I wasn't sure we could get it, but I wanted to say 50. So if all of you show up, we're going to beat my 19 prediction. If you want to have a preview that involves lunch and not leaving this building, every month Together Baton Rouge has a luncheon where anyone is invited, and we are hosting the luncheon on the 21st. So come here on the 21st and you get food, and they're talking about the legislative session and my words, not theirs, the foolishness that may come out of it. I don't know what they're talking about, but that's what I'm predicting.
There's a sign-up sheet on a table outside.
And there was a table outside with a sign-up sheet, so that's what you need to know. Also, April 23rd is Reverend Chris Long's installation. April 1st is the auction, which is our first auction since 2019. And Christy Boudreau is up here with an announcement on it.
Thank you. Can you hear me with my mask? Sure. Okay. I'll be quick. Hopefully, I will have stopped talking by the time you've stopped listening. Items. Last day to submit forms for your items is tomorrow. If you've been thinking or wondering about an idea you have, talk to a team member, and I'm looking out. I think that's me. Talk to a team member. If your item isn't green, talk to me. Volunteers. We still need volunteers at all levels of commitment. If you haven't let us know you're willing to help, talk to a team member. Still in need of some auctioneers. No experience necessary. We will walk you through the whole thing. Talk to a team member. Attendance, virtual. We want this auction to be accessible to all. So, if you want to participate from home, please let Allison or an auction team member know. We will get you the info you need. We need to hear from you no later than Wednesday, March 29th. That would be the Wednesday before the auction. So we can get you set up. If you want to be in community with us but aren't sure if you want to participate in the actual auction, calm down. We will have some other things you could do and still be with us. Admission. Cost at the door is a suggested donation amount. Nothing is required. Pay what you can. Childcare will be provided, including food for the kids, so you can bring them too, food and drink. We have a lovely charcuterie grazing station, which is a little bit different than the way we've done it in other years. Planned for you with everything from cheese and crackers to pizza, shrimp, cocktail shooters we welcome, and are still in need of donations of wine. Talk to a team member. And that will be April 1st at 6 o'clock. Thank you so much.
All right, so Christy Boudreau, thank you. And just to let you all know, we're going to invite Michael Dow to come up. When I finish saying whatever I was going to say, which I don't know what it is. I have been following Michael Dowd's work for probably 20 years. He wrote a book called Thank God for Evolution, which you can buy, but he says only 90% of it he still agrees with. So only read 90% of the book. You get to decide which parts you don't want to read. But I've been wanting to bring him here for a long time. He came here in 2006 or so.
Actually, 2008.
2008, January 2008. So with today's story, Michael Dow.
So, good morning. This really is a story for all ages, story for the child in all of us, because we're a lot older, bigger, and have a much weirder family than most of us have any idea. And the kid in all of us and our kids typically enjoy this because we're older than we think, because our bodies, of course, are made of atoms, and those atoms are created. In fact, most of the atoms are created inside red giant stars that go through, or supernovas that go through this explosion phase. But the hydrogen atoms in our bodies are actually 13.8 billion years old, or 14 billion years old to round it off. We are mostly water. Of course, water is H2O, and if you started filling me up, we're about 70% water, so it's really quite amazing that we don't slosh around when we walk. And of course, the H2O, the H is literally 14 billion years old, all the hydrogen atoms. So most of us is a lot older than most of us think. So we're older. To say that we're bigger is that we're actually, our larger body, think Russian nesting dolls, right? Our larger body is the entire universe. The universe began smaller than an atom, and it's been expanding and complexifying. And we are that process, now becoming aware of itself. We're not separate creatures on Earth in a universe. We're a mode of being of Earth. We're an expression of the universe. So we're as big as the cosmos, you could say. That is, our larger self is as large as the cosmos. And to say that we are weirder, or that our family is much weirder than most of us know, Marlon Lavenar is the pastor of the largest Unitarian Universalist church in the United States, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, All Souls in Tulsa. And Marlon has got this great quote. He said, you know, we've all heard some fundamentalist-minded person say, don't tell me I'm related to monkeys. But now that we understand DNA and have cracked its code, we know that we're not just related to monkeys, we're related to zucchini, so let's get over it, right? So we're older, we're bigger, and we have a much weirder family. In fact, my wife, Connie Barlow, is also an educator, an evolutionary educator. And she used to do programs in Unitarian churches because we traveled North America for 19 years. We've spoken in about half of all Unitarian Universalist churches. So she would do programs with the kids often. And sometimes she'd preach as well. But she did this one program where she talked about our relatedness to all other creatures, that our family is larger and weirder than most of us think. And this little girl, this little 8-year-old girl, went running out in the parking lot to her mother and said, Mommy, I'm related to a duck-billed platypus. So we're older, we're bigger, and we have a much weirder family than most of us know. And that we know through science, through global collective intelligence. And I think that's pretty cool.
The sharing of stones ritual here at the Unitarian Church of Baton Rouge is a time in our service where we take pause to come forth to share stones to honor the joys and sorrows of our lives with this community. Visitors are always welcome to take part in this ritual. Before we begin, of particular note this week, we have a stone to share regarding the passing of a former member of the congregation. As some of you may have known, Linda Watkins. She passed away just a few years ago, so we put one stone. We will be sending a card of condolence to Bryn Watkins, her son, her daughter. Please forgive me, I'm still 8 months new, for the condolences and the passing away of Linda. We're also going to have some cards out for a few congregants who are in the process of healing from a variety of things or maybe undergoing surgery. We want to keep in our spirits and energy the name of Nancy Cunin and Noah Shaw. We also have something to celebrate. Next Sunday, say next Sunday. Katie Howard will be celebrating 93 years of being on this planet. Beyond the billions of years, she's 93 next Sunday. So let's give it up for those who would like to take part in this ritual. Please come forth, lining up along the east or west walls of the sanctuary, our sharing of stones ritual.
And we say together, with hope to make this a better world, we light this flame. Its light is a symbol of the power of love.
I have three readings this morning. The first from Indigenous elder and plant scientist Robin Wall Kimmerer. If we are looking for models for self-sustaining communities, we need to look no further than an old-growth forest, or the old-growth forest cultures they raised in symbiosis with them. The second reading is from my mentor, William Catton, author of the book Overshoot, the most important book I've ever read in my life. Human society is inextricably part of a global biotic community, and in that community, human dominance has had and is having self-destructive consequences. And the final quote from Mary Christina Wood: I look at the land as being part of a sacred covenant with our children and the coming generations. If we live only for ourselves, our lives are bereft of true legacy. But when we live in the presence of our ancestors, we also live for our descendants. To feel concern for the future is to bring a piece of eternity into the present and let it guide us. The climate crisis is sorting out those who feel a duty to future generations from those who only live for themselves.
A couple of things you should know as we prepare for the offering. First is anyone who wants to talk to you in an organized fashion between the services. Then those who are interested, talk to me or Reverend Chris or Maida, who I'll say why in a minute. If Michael Dowd has agreed to do 5 Zoom sessions. What are they called?
Skills for post-doom, no-gloom living.
Skills for post-doom, no-gloom living. So we're going to, from him in Michigan, we're going to have 5 follow-up sessions that he's agreed to do with us. So if you're interested in that, talk to one of us. And the other person I wanted to mention is Maida Owens, who is, Maida, have you been a member of this church 15 years? 20? 20 years. You all can clap for that. That's good. Maida is a folklorist who has been, you didn't know I was going to do this, but has been studying how to preserve, as part of her job, preserve the cultures of Louisiana that are on the coast that are looking at losing their coastline and also possibly losing their cultures and finding a way to preserve that. Maida and I and Reverend Chris have been in discussion about ways that we can begin conversations in this church about the impacts of climate change on Louisiana, not necessarily from a fixing perspective, but from a dealing with perspective. So that is a conversation that's going to be going on. Anyway, Maida, would you, online people, picture someone waving. This is who you will talk to, if you, or any of us, if you want more information on that. And with that, this month we are sharing our offering with the Louisiana Environmental Action Network. This is an organization that does great work in Louisiana. So we would like, especially since we have a special guest here, we'd like to give them, I don't know, $100,000. And I'm leaving that on you. So that means since we're splitting it, $200,000 between the 40 of you, the morning's offering will now be grateful. Visitors, you don't have to give $40,000. But this morning's offering will be gratefully given and received.
So the title of my sermon this morning, and I was delighted when Reverend Nathan invited me to do it in 3 parts, 3 6 to 8 minute segments. And I thought, well, I've never done that before. This will be fun. So I've got a title for each of the 3 sections because, ministers are supposed to have titles. And my wife reminded me to tell a story. So the story I want to tell is what a joy it has been, thanks to Maida, that I have had an experience of climate chaos, climate mayhem, climate challenges, where I never had before in this way. In terms of the conversations that I've had, the time down in Homa, and basically getting to understand that climate change is not just an abstract theoretical issue. It's an issue that you all and others even further south have been dealing with and seeing the erosion of the land and the erosion in some cases of culture as well. And so how do we be with that? So what I'd like to speak about this morning is Sustainability 101. Like, what are the basics of sustainability? And I suggest that the heart and soul of it is ecology as the new theology, or ecology as theology. Now, what do I mean by that? So the 3 segments are identity, that's what I'll speak about now, history, and then ministry. How do we take this larger sense of identity that I already alluded to, with the story for all ages, and our history, that we are part of the epic of evolution, we are the universe becoming aware of itself, how can we take that into ministry, not just ministry congregational, but our own lives? In other words, what I mean by ministry are, where does our sense of enlarged identity and our sense of continuity with time and space, how can that motivate us to be of service to our communities, to be a blessing to our communities? So as Robin Wall Kimmerer emerged, and her book, by the way, if you have not read Braiding Sweetgrass, I recommend it for adult religious education. It's a fabulous book for discussion. It's a good-sized book. It'll take you a while to get through it, but it is so brilliantly written that you will weep at numerous times throughout the book. And if you listen to the audiobook, she narrates it in her own voice. And it'll bring you to tears. It's like number 9 on the New York Times bestseller list. It was written a decade ago. Braiding Sweetgrass. Indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teachings of plants is the title of the book. So the sense of ecology as the heart of theology. And what do I mean by identity? Well, identity is your sense of self. And most of us in human-centered Western civilization especially think that our self stops with our skin. It's, what Alan Watts called the skin-encapsulated ego. And yet, in reality, our bodies are constantly in exchange with what we call the environment. See, language matters. In fact, there was a very famous Russian polymath. He was a linguist. He was an author, and he taught at some of the most prestigious colleges and universities in North America. Joseph Brodsky. He won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1987. And he famously said, "You Americans are so naive. You think that evil is going to come into your houses wearing big black boots." He said, "It doesn't happen like that. Evil comes in the language. Look in the language." Now, what he means by evil isn't something supernatural or otherworldly or woo-woo. What he means are belief systems and stories that cause good people to do great harm. Good is anything that promotes or encourages or supports ecological integrity, social coherence, and personal wholeness. Evil is anything that diminishes or destroys or degrades ecological integrity, social coherence, and personal wholeness. This is not moral rocket science. We don't need 10 commandments to tell us this. But our identity matters. If you think your self stops with your skin, if you're not aware of the nested nature of reality, and if you're not aware that language matters, what we call our biophysical creator, sustainer, and end, and that's what I'm talking about, our biophysical creator, sustainer, and end. That's the biosphere, that's the cosmos, that's nature with a capital N. But if we call that reality merely the environment, then the language itself leads good people to do great evil. And that's what's happened. We've related to the living world, I say we, human-centered cultures, human-centered civilizations, city-based agricultural civilizations have all been about not honoring the air, water, soil, and life upon which we depend and defending those systems, the integrity of those systems. That's true sustainability. No, we've been basically, our whole economic system is taking from the living world, making stuff out of it, advertising it, selling it, and goes to the waste heap. And the faster that happens, we call that progress. GDP goes up. And so that's not sustainable. And good people with the best of intentions can participate in this because we all have kids, well, not all, but we want to raise our kids and our families and have a good life and basically do all the things that we do. So our sense of identity, that nested sense that your self is larger than this being. We are part of a living, self-organizing, I would say divine being that you can call Gaia if you want, you can call nature, capital N if you want, or as I do, God, G, Earth emoji, D. Because all that does is it reminds me that any notion of God that doesn't include our biophysical creator, sustainer, and end is an ecocidal notion of the divine. So even though we can't transform everything, and even though we're in a declining phase, as I've spoken about throughout this weekend, we can nonetheless identify and realize that we are bigger, older, and have a much weirder family than most of us know. And that allows us to relax into having a more intimate, personal, respectful, and reverential relationship to primary reality. Because again, think nesting dolls. We're in the middle. We are made up. I am made up of smaller, creative, intelligent realities. I wouldn't last 3 days without my microbiome. We can't last without the trees and the forests and the algae and the plankton. And so everything inside us and everything outside us that we wouldn't exist without is primary reality. And indigenous peoples have always known true sustainability, Sustainability 101, is recognizing that primary reality must be honored as primary, not secondary. Human-centeredness is what leads us to put ourselves on the path to hell. And I'm talking about this world hell, not otherworldly. So, the first piece is that larger sense of identity, that we are the universe becoming aware of itself. We're nature uncovering its own nature. I'm a religious naturalist. I interpret all mythic language as saying something poetic, something symbolic about this one reality in which I live and move and have my being. So I'll come back to deeper implications of that in terms of our history and ministry throughout the sermon.
Right where you're seated, let's do this next hymn.
My life flows on in endless song of lover's lamentation. I hear the reel of far-off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music singing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars? I know the truth it liveth. What though the darkness round me glows? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? And our breaths tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing. When friends rejoice so far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cells and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When traps of ruin are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
Would you all join me in a moment of prayer and reflection? The God that we know when we see love and kindness and hope and forgiveness, that mystery named and not named, believed in and not. Be with us on this day and hold those in this congregation who are grieving, who are worried, who are weary. Hold those who know this next month what happens at the Capitol could be really painful to a lot of people. Help us to remember that there are real human hearts crafting bills that can do harm, and real human hearts can turn around. help us to remember that we are part of something much larger than ourselves. And help us to know as we grieve for what is coming, as we fear for what is coming, and as we hope for what is coming. Help us to know that the world is more kind and more loving and more generous than we could have ever wanted. Amen.
That refrain, how can I keep from singing, is an apt one for this morning's sermon, because when ecology is the heart of your theology, and when we recognize that living in right relationship to the fundamental laws of nature is the only thing that sustainability could possibly ever mean, and that we haven't been doing that for thousands of years, then we recognize with that clarity, especially when the sense of history. So I want to talk just very briefly about the history that we learned through global collective intelligence, because there are many people that interpreted the first aspect of this sermon in a human-centered way, and that just makes all the more confusion. When you interpret history from a life-centered way, God, the way I'm using it, G, Earth emoji D, that is a life-centered or reality-centered way, then you recognize that there are two fundamental ways of being human in cultures. One is preserving and sustaining all of the elements of the living world with religious ferocity. It's all about no change, no progress. The other is the delusion of human-centered progress, where we see over and over again, boom and bust, progress, regress, rise and fall. And we have over 100 examples in the last 6,000 years of cultures going through that process, using more resources than the natural systems can bear, and exuding more waste than the natural systems can tolerate, and the system collapses. So there's a slow rise of progress, at least for the elites in the ruling class, obviously not for the slaves and slave societies, not for the oppressed and the marginalized, but certainly for some. There's this progress, and then there's a more rapid decline. It's called the Seneca cliff. The rise to greatness is slow, but the road to ruin is rapid. Famous quote from Seneca. So what we learn by this process is that human-centeredness is deadly at the societal level. It's not great at the individual level either, but it's certainly not good at the societal level. And so understanding this, we start losing the hubris. I love the ancient Greek definition of hubris. The overweening pride of the doomed. Hubris, the overweening pride of the doomed. And see, previously civilizations could become great. They overshoot the carrying capacity. That is, they use more resources, exude more waste than the system could bear, and collapse happens. But then some other civilization picks up. But we're now global, industrial civilization, what William Catton calls Homo colossus, where each of us uses 20 to 50 times the resources, and each of us exudes 20 to 50 times the waste of Homo sapiens. Homo colossus has a terminal condition. The problem is, each and every one of us lives inside of Homo colossus. We benefit from Homo colossus. We are the beneficiaries of a system that is ecocidal, that is inherently destructive of the air, the water, the soil, and the forests upon which we depend. So how do we live with integrity? How do we live with joy? And that's the thing. When most of us learn that either we or a loved one has a terminal condition, most of us don't go, wow, that's a bummer. Well, okay, you know, it's been a great life, and let's just live life fully and love the life I live for as much time as I have. Most of us don't do that. Most of us at first say, hell no! This can't be real. This can't be true. And then we get angry. You know, if we were smokers, we get angry at ourselves. And we start blaming ourselves or others, and we blame everybody. This is the classic Kubler-Ross stages of grief. Denial, anger, bargaining. If I just stop smoking, if I just stop eating meat, if I just stop driving, if we all get solar panels, if we all get wind turbines, a Green New Deal, all this desperate activism and desperate sense that if only, or if we all just, and that's the bargaining phase. And it's healthy and normal and natural. Most of us go through it. In fact, most of us don't just go through the stages, they're experiences of grief, and we cycle and spin round and round. And then there's depression. Most of us, if you're alive and you have a pulse and you're not a sociopath or a psychopath, you're probably going to feel some grief and sadness and depression. That's normal, that's natural. And even though not any one of us has a terminal condition, this larger reality, Homo colossus, that we're all living inside of, does have a terminal condition. Homo colossus' terminal condition is called ecological overshoot. And that's what has killed virtually every other previous human-centered civilization throughout history. The problem is we're now global, we're now interdependent, and there's no new civilization that's going to emerge out of our ashes. There may be, in fact, 7,000 pockets of habitability around the planet, but they're going to have to live with indigenous wisdom, indigenous heart, indigenous values. That is life-centered heart and values. So this is a humble understanding of history. It's a God-centered, G, earth emoji, D. It's a life-centered. It's ecocentric, not anthropocentric. It's not human-centered, or in some cases, androcentric, man-centered. It's not that. It's life-centered. And that's what we get from an understanding of science as our sacred creation story, the epic of evolution, as our first and only globally produced evidence-based creation story. And this can sound pretty depressing, but what I'm here to share this morning and this weekend is that on the other side of acceptance can come living with such astonished gratitude that we seek to be a blessing wherever and however we can for whatever our remaining time is, individually and collectively. Because systems are in breakdown. If you're not aware that every one of you and every one of your loved ones could potentially die this decade, you're not paying attention to what's happening in the world. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it could. There's probably at least a 30 or 40% chance that it will. Because we're looking at all it takes is two of the main 5 grain-growing regions of the world to fail in the same year, and you're looking at 1 billion or more people dying of starvation within 14 months. So I'm not here to give you bad news, but I am here to say that this epic of evolution, this understanding of a larger sense of identity, and this sense of continuity with time helps us realize that we're in a declining phase, not an expanding phase. And I suspect some of you will say, Michael Dowd is full of bunk, and you won't believe that, and that's okay. Because again, denial is healthy and normal, and it's usually just adaptive inattention. You got to live your life and be present to your kids and grandkids, and you be present to your life. So it's okay with me if you say, I can't accept that. But what I'm going to suggest in the last piece of this sermon is that in acceptance of that things are in contraction, not expanding, actually the possibilities for emotional and relational health and well-being and joy in life is actually increased, not decreased. And that's to be the last component.
All right, so let's go ahead and rise in body or spirit for this next hymn.
For the earth, for
getting used to the structure. I said, am I on now? So to bring this to completion in a way that actually can help us have some gratitude and joy and a sense of possibility, because it's possible to interpret some of what I've been saying in pretty scary ways. Ministry. We've got identity, our larger sense of self, that when we remind ourselves that we're not separate from nature, we're part of nature, nature's divine, it's our biophysical creator, sustainer, and end. When we remind ourselves of that and feel gratitude for those realities inside us that support our life and all life, those realities outside us, that sense of identity and the sense of history that isn't human-centered, the recognition that all species go extinct. All beings die. So when we recognize that birth and death are part of the same process of life, and death isn't evil, extinction isn't evil, then we can begin to live with fearlessness. 14 years ago, I was diagnosed with a form of cancer that could have killed me in 10 months. I had a tumor the size of my fist in my spleen. And they had just developed a new chemotherapy that they thought would work, but they didn't know. And if the chemo didn't work, I would have died in 10 months. It was a very aggressive form of cancer. And so I had several days of freak out, for sure, but then I just came to that place of trying to be at peace with the worst case scenario, which is worst case scenario is I die this year. Can I be with that? And at first I couldn't. But as I meditated with it, as I just was with it, I thought, I kept reminding myself of this larger sense of time and space, and that if I die, we all die. And I had lived a pretty joyous, wonderful life. My kids were doing well, my legacy was getting out. And so I came to that peace that passes understanding that they speak about religiously, and from that moment I had no fear. I lived with gratitude for the past, and trust in the future, and that's what I mean by faith, is trust, not beliefs. Faith is trust. It's trusting reality. It's trusting life and death as it really is. And once I had that, I lived each day with a sense of what I call astonished gratitude. Every day, waking up and saying, wow, I get to live another day. That sense of not taking anything for granted, not taking the food I eat for granted, not taking the sunrises and sunsets for granted, not taking the storms and the rain for granted. I mean, those of you that have gone through these hurricanes that you all have to deal with and the rain in 2016 know what it's like to be reminded of A, how perilous life is, and also not to take life for granted because it can be taken away quickly, and our possessions and our so-called wealth can be taken away very quickly and easily. So that's one of the gifts. And when I speak of ministry, what I mean is taking this, it's on the other side of acceptance. You know that famous serenity prayer? It was penned by Reinhold Niebuhr, a Protestant theologian who was also a religious naturalist in the 1960s. God, life, reality. Grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Living one moment at a time, or living one day at a time, cherishing one moment at a time, accepting hardship as the pathway to peace. See, a lot of us don't know those last two sentences. So on the other side of acceptance, when we accept that we are in contraction, we're not in expansion anymore. When we accept that that could possibly mean the extinction of our species in the not too distant future. But when we live with a sense of being okay with that, if it occurs, we can't know whether it will or not, but then live with as much integrity, as much joy, as much passion, as much love, as much commitment to making a difference at whatever scale that you can. And especially for those of us over 50, find somebody under 30 or under 40 and just ask them, is there anything that you know how to do or any knowledge that you have that would be useful to them? Don't assume that they know. Listen first. Just be with younger people. But find a way to, in some way, be a contribution to your community, however it is. Maybe it's asking the question, how can we help preserve the healthy aspects of culture into the future? Or how can we lessen suffering wherever it's occurring? I sometimes tell people, I sometimes invite people to take a piece of paper, and I'll conclude with this little exercise. I'm going to describe it now, but I invite you to do this in the next day or two. Take a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. So you get two columns. And on one side, list all the things that light you up, that give you joy, that give you energy and a sense of like excitement or whatever, all the things you're good at, things other people tell you that you're good at, etc. List it all. At the top of that list, you put my great joy. And on the other side, you list all the things that you're aware of in your community or in the world that are the world's needs. Like not just where you intellectually know about what's needed, but where do you feel it? Where do you feel anger or sadness or grief or whatever? Where does it hit you? And then list all that. And then you just pay attention to this part of your body. You don't have to call it prayer or meditation if you don't want to. Just pay attention to this part of your body and ask guidance from here to see. It's like you're trying to play mix and match. Where are the intersections between what lights you up, what gives you joy, what gives you energy, and what the world's needs are or your community's needs as you feel them? And those places where your joy and the world's needs intersect or your community's needs intersect, that's your calling, that's your mission, that's your ministry at this time in life. That's where you can be a contribution and a blessing to others in a way that nourishes you in the process. And others are likely to join you in that because it's contagious. It's not self-centered, it's other-centered, it's life-centered, and it's a desire to be a blessing. And here's the thing. We have over 100 examples of previous cultures that went through this, and on the downside is where saints, sages, heroes, and sheroes are born. That's where they emerge, is in difficult times, not in the good times. And we'll have no trouble, no lack of difficult times in the months and years, and if we're graced to have decades to come. So again, the larger sense of identity, yourself is larger and a lot older than most of us think. You are one with the universe and one with history. History not human-centered, because we're not living in a sustainable culture. We're living in a human-centered culture that goes through this pattern. But that doesn't mean that we can't adopt sustainable heart values and live with as much integrity and as much green integrity. Life, that's why I wear this green clergy shirt, because I'm committed to the greening of religion. So identity, history, we're part of this process that's billions of years in the making. And we're part of it. We're an expression of it. We grow out of the planet in the same way that apples grow out of an apple tree. We're organically related. In fact, Brian Swim is a physicist, a cosmologist. He says, you can sum up the entire history of the universe in 2 sentences. You take a great cloud of hydrogen gas and you just leave it alone. And it becomes rose bushes, giraffes, and human beings. So this identity, history, and then finding where our joy and the world's needs intersect, that's our ministry. And it can be a tremendous, and you can have tremendous gratitude, awe, amazement. My wife, Connie, one of her little rituals, she often will wake up in the morning, especially since this Ukrainian conflict, all this kind of stuff, the war, she'll wake up and she'll say, wow, we weren't nuked last night. We get to live another day. It's just gallows humor, but it allows us to be present to what a gift, what a blessing to live each day. And it's even more of a blessing if you can find somebody that you can be a contribution to that day. Thank you.
Let's rise in body or spirit for a closing hymn.
Wake now my senses and hear the earth call. Feel the deep power of being in awe. King with the wealth of creation, your vow. Giving, receiving, as love shows us how.
this place, this space, embodying the very best of the Unitarian Universalist tradition, celebrating our differences and being a blessing to all those with whom we come into contact in a way that also is a blessing to the future. Amen, aho, and blessed be.